You have the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast going through your ears right now. I am your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter, NJH287. Also hit me up on LinkedIn where I post more content. The website, dsmsports.net. Visit it. There's more content every episode there. And of course, you can find every episode as well on your preferred podcast platform. Awesome show for you guys today. I've been following this guest for a while. He provides such great insight into the industry, does a great job himself in his own position. We talk a lot about monetizing social on this podcast, social media sponsorships, sponsor content, branded content. You're going to learn a lot about that today from my guest. My guest on the podcast is Alex Kopilow. He is Senior Manager of Business Solutions for MSG Sports. It's Madison Square Garden Sports. You may know it also as the property behind the New York Knicks, the New York Rangers, Knicks Gaming, the Rockettes, Madison Square Garden, the venue. There's so many properties that Alex and his colleagues get to cover there. And just Alex does a great job how to do sponsor social, how to value it, how to position his role, of course, with MSG Sports. And you're going to learn a lot today from Alex, so stick around for that. And definitely hone in on things that you can learn and some of those principles that hopefully you can take back to your position. As Alex talks about, it really goes down a lot to what are the objectives of each partner, and also how can we find the intersection of what fans want as well. Just take a step back and look at every piece of sponsor content. Think about the sponsor content that you do or have done in your role, branded content that you've done in your role, and think about what objectives is that helping the partner to accomplish, because they're doing it for a reason. Is it a logo on something because it's helping them to drive more awareness and through those impressions? Are they reaching a certain audience on a platform that you have out there? Are they collecting audience information, fan data through a sweepstakes or a giveaway? Are they trying to get a message out there and drive awareness of a new product or a new tagline or new positioning? There's so many different goals that partners can and do accomplish through their partnerships, through sponsorships with sports teams. And we talk a lot about that with Alex today and how it plays out specifically in the digital and social space. Alex is a wealth of knowledge there, so you're going to learn a lot from him. Stick around. Here is the interview with Alex Kopilow, Senior Manager of Business Solutions for MSG Sports. Right back with today's guest, and frankly, we could have been recording this whole time because we've already just been shooting the shit and talking sports business, talking sports and social. I'm joining the podcast today by someone I've been following a while now, Alex Kopilow. He is Senior Manager of Business Solutions for MSG Sports. And welcome to the podcast today, Alex.
Great to be here, Neil. It's a first time, but long time listener.
Love hearing that. So psyched to pick your brain. You are really on top of this stuff of how to activate partners in social, how to drive fan engagement with branded content, just really being on top of everything. You are so impressive. I love following your stuff. But before we get into the meat of our discussion and get into pick your brain, tell us about you. Tell us about your career path, your stops along the way, and any tips for folks that want to do what you do.
Yeah, it has been a long, winding road in my career for sure. I mean, I went to school at Ohio State and graduated in 2011 and jumped right into the broadcast journalism world. So I was a sports anchor for local news for about 5 to 6 years. Working as a one-man band, kind of shooting, editing, writing, and presenting on air, all my own stuff. So it took me all across the country, from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Lawton, Oklahoma, upstate New York in the Hudson Valley, and then wrapped things up down in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I was all over the place, doing everything from sports to news, and really loved that. That was my dream for the longest time. But then, kind of towards the end there, my wife and I, we had just gotten married. We really wanted to be back in the big city. I'm originally from New York and she's from Chicago, and decided to get out of the business and make a change. And we moved to Chicago. So 27 years old, I went from being a broadcast journalist and being on air to an intern at a PR agency called Weber Shandwick. And I think they saw my background, and initially they put me on the Big Ten conferences work, as well as the Cherry Marketing Institute's work, focusing on how to publicize tart cherries and getting people to eat that, which was definitely really interesting. But what was great was, we went into PR because people just say, oh, you're a journalist, go into PR. And that's honestly what I went off of. And I got integrated into a sports partner, as well as, the Cherry partner, who was really focused on influencer work. And that was kind of my introduction into the fact that PR can be digital. So that was really, really helpful. I got my first full-time job at a different agency shortly after that. And again, really was lucky to have the opportunity to not only focus on your traditional earned media, media pitching, building media lists, writing press releases, which was not as much what I started to gravitate towards, but really the influencer work and getting to hire influencers, build out campaigns back in the days when, we were hiring not only to post on Instagram, but literally write blog posts, and we were monitoring web traffic. That's how far influencer marketing has gone. So that was, a really great kind of crash course into influencer marketing and the digital side. And, unfortunately was part of like the company's first ever round of layoffs. But in my next role, I think that's where digital really started to take shape for me, because I ended up at a paid media agency focusing on paid social. And it really started to make me think about, objective based marketing and
Yeah.
going, what's your objective? What's your budget? What's your goal? And it really made me think harder about building strategies. So went from a paid agency and then got to really do integrated digital strategy over at Golan in Chicago for 2 years, and was, really in a good position to work with McDonald's, which was outstanding to be with such a big brand and working on national and international campaigns, as well as the McDonald's All-American Games, where I was essentially the social media manager for those accounts.
Wow.
And again, getting to be adjacent to sports in that way. So really crazy run there. And then finally in 2021, broke into sports. I had applied for a job with the Chicago White Sox and was kind of the first person in the role of digital partnerships. They had just launched their digital partnerships kind of focus, and really wanted to build that up and drive revenue. And I was able to jump over and break into sports after a long road that way on the team side, and spent 2 seasons there before ending up here at MSG Sports, kind of working on digital partnerships for the Knicks and Rangers.
Such a great, I have so many questions, so many different avenues we can go here, but I would be remiss if I didn't start by just thinking about a 27-year-old Alex starting over essentially, and like maybe not diverting a dream, but starting a new dream. And like, so what was that like to be like, I'm gonna take this internship and I'm gonna start from square one, just about. I'm not without with some skills and experience, of course, but like how big of a life decision was that for you?
It was a huge decision. I mean, it certainly was strange, right? My peers as interns were some not even 21. We would literally go to a happy hour and some people couldn't go to the bars. So it was a different stage of life. I'm here married at 27, being with people who are, maybe 21 or sub 21. So that was definitely a change. But I mean, ultimately for me, what I leaned on was the fact that like I don't know what I don't know, and I have never really worked in a corporate setting to that point. And while it was definitely a huge change in terms of what my work life had been like, I had never worked a 9 to 5. I never had nights, weekends, and holidays to myself. I knew it was really important for me to learn what it was like to work in that environment. I mean, I learned even just the little things that take you a long way in your professional career, like how to write a proper email, how to make sure your tone is conveyed properly in communication, how to communicate with other team members. And if you're struggling, letting them know and saying, like, I need help, and leaning on others and working together was really, really important. I mean, I definitely struggled with that and learned that over time. And I think that was the most valuable piece, was how do I learn to work in a corporate environment? And then it also just exposed me to all these different pieces of, what PR was and the digital side of it as well.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us start out in that PR side or social media side, and marketing is like, when you look at how social media started for a lot of organizations, there was a foundation of PR. Sometimes there's a foundation of marketing. Sometimes it was truly a foundation of digital. That's more the exception than the norm. And so like, how did you start to view social as you came up? Like, was it always a function of PR? Was it more of a marketing play? I mean, certainly there's a little bit of both. Or how did you come to see social fit into a PR strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the way it really comes into play the most is kind of getting that earned media out of it, like those earned wins. Because as much as people would think when you go into a PR agency and you're working for these big brands that they come with huge budgets, they don't. They don't come with big budgets, and you have to be really, really scrappy. So, content, organic, social, like if you can play that right, if you can do really well and capture attention that way, it's very efficient for your budget. So that's really great. And it tends to be a little bit more authentic with your audience. You're not buying that attention per se. You're really trying to build it off of those relationships. So it's really focused, on those earned wins and how that content can come into play. And then, of course, it's audience reach, right? We talk a lot about influencer work already, and where PR comes to play. So it's really getting in with other people's audiences and making sure it's authentically tied to the brand, right? Are they fans of the brand already? And how can they communicate that on your behalf to help build that affinity for your brand, drive sales, and gather that attention as well?
And how did you start to look at that ecosystem as you came into that more traditional sports role, going away from leaving the agency side and going to a direct team with the White Sox and now with MSG, of course, as well? We think about earned media, and yes, there's already a lot of third-party media coverage happening with those teams. It may not be exactly what you guys want from a content perspective or storytelling perspective. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's amplifying what you guys are putting out there as well. And then you have athletes and their stories and what they're doing. You have the ESPNs of the world coming in and doing their thing. So like when you get to a team side, how do you start to figure out what are the stories that we want out there? And then how does that fit in with marketing goals, with fan engagement goals, with PR goals, with stuff, with facilitating earned media, facilitating third-party media coverage? Like, how do you look at that ecosystem and ultimately determine what the best way is to construct a strategy that works from all angles?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, working as a sports team, it's not all too much different from working on the agency or PR side. The main difference is that the sports team is the influencer now. So when you're distributing content, you're thinking of yourself as the influencer. You have the direct access to this highly engaged audience that people want a part of. So you need to know how to leverage that. I think what translate across any industry is whether it's organic content or branded content, you really have to think in terms of strategy of, matching the expectations of fans when they hit the follow button. Why do they follow the White Sox? Why do they follow the Knicks or the Rangers, right? You need to match those expectations with the fact that they want to follow to see what's happening with players and coaches. They want to know the latest and greatest on the field or on the court. And they want to get that all access feel, and they want to get to know the players. You can't just throw them the latest sale that one of your partners has, or, quite frankly, even ticket sales. You have to be really careful of like towing that line, but it's all about matching expectations of why people are following you in the first place. And when coming up with any idea, you need to keep that as your North Star when building things out.
And as you started to work more in line with the people running the accounts and also on the partnerships front, how have you found social fits into whether it's an RFP or working with a given prospect or an existing partner? I think like early on, before your time even, social was a throw-in. It's, hey, we're doing all this stuff and we'll throw in a few Facebook posts. Why not? We'll scratch your back a little bit. Like, and are you now thinking about a full 360-degree activation? Or is social kind of not on its own island as a derisive term, but truly on its own because it can do things differently? The audience is different, or are you trying to have the partner experience be the same whether you're encountering it at the ballpark, at the arena, and on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, whatever?
Yeah, a lot there. And I think like the short answer on one of the pieces is just like the 360 view, that's the ultimate goal, right? Anytime you can build out a partnership that includes digital channels, things going on in the arena, things going on in the community, if you can tie those all together, those are the best kinds of platforms that really, really go far, not only for partners, but for fans. But I think, a lot of part of my job is kind of education, both internally and externally, around the value of digital and partnerships. It's not just, hey, let's throw it up on social, right? Like just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should. I mean, digital partnerships, their inherent value is that it's kind of advertising you can touch, right? So you can buy signage in an arena and you can pull all the impressions that you get from that. But with social content, the big difference, the differentiator is the engagement, right? We have highly engaged audiences that are significantly higher than the median against most industries that most brands are in. And we have that engaged audience. So you really need to show the value of the fact that you have an engaged audience that where anytime you have a like, comment, or share, it's kind of confirming that someone's seen it. Whereas an impression's like, well, it might have been halfway on the screen, or maybe someone in an arena looked in that general direction to get impressions. It's a little bit more clear on that, but also digital is really an opportunity to advertise to fans outside of just your home games, to reach them, because even when you are in an arena, it's a second screen experience. You got your phone out too. The fact that you can target people via paid. I mean, there's just so many advantages to having digital made within a partnership to really help businesses achieve their goals.
And is it ideal then to have a similar messaging, similar activation, or are there cases where the way you encounter a brand on social is different than you may encounter that brand on in venue?
Yeah, I think the top version is always to be able to match that, but I think it's okay when it can't. I think that a lot of people, when they're trying to build out partnerships, they're trying to make every tactic accomplish every goal. And I found the best way to kind of build these partnerships is you should have kind of one tactic look to achieve one goal. So it's really important to speak to your partners about what is the objective, how we're going to be measured as well, and trying to align the best tactic to align with that goal. So you can use multiple tactics to achieve those goals. So it is best when like it's the same message throughout, but there are ways where you can really crush those goals, but it's all about making sure that you have the tactic aligned to the goal, and it's just kind of one objective for one tactic.
Yeah, and let's get in the weeds a little bit too, to extend that conversation. What are the typical objectives, whether you're thinking about your hands-on experience or what you see or what you know in your head, when you're thinking about the potential objectives a partner may have, whether it's lead gen, sales, awareness, brand management association. Like when you're thinking about potential goals a partner may have that you guys can accomplish through digital or just overall as a sports entity, what comes to mind?
Yeah, I mean, we go throughout the marketing funnel. So you definitely have your awareness goals where you have partners who just need brand recognition within your audience. So those are really great for high frequency, your starting lineups, your final scores, something that's going to appear every single game day. Getting that high frequency and high engagement is really, really crucial for partners. So we still see a lot of that. I think a lot of partners now want to go a little bit deeper. They want to, really push product consideration, and what are the best ways to show off your product? Is it the New York Giants kind of using a Pepsi Zero Sugar can and doing a can challenge with their players and trying to roll it to the end of the table without it falling off, and that's a natural integration? Or is it the Los Angeles Chargers, answering questions that they're pulling out of a Popeyes box, right? Like, how can you kind of manipulate in a way that's still fan forward to get the product in? So I think that's some really good examples kind of in the middle of the funnel. And then of course, lead generation. I think, there's a lot of opportunity with lead generation that can continue to be used, throughout the industry to help generate leads for partners. I think it's, the teams have a lot to offer by way to get that information, whether it's tickets to a game, whether it's unique experiences that teams can offer. It really gets people to opt in and be willing to pass along their information, to the end goal partner. You see that a lot. We just saw a schedule release for the NFL. I mean, all the guess the schedule sweepstakes where you had opt-ins for partners. I mean, that is a great way to do that. And that comes all the way at the beginning of the pitch, right? That becomes like, what is the audience crossover that we're trying to hit? So those leads are a little bit more qualified when you pass them over. It's not just getting them a ton of leads and then them not being really great. Like, if you're doing the right kind of partnership from the jump, that means there's an attraction to have that audience, and now you've generated it for a partner.
And how much are the partners willing to play with you guys in terms of trying to go to the bottom of the funnel, or not necessarily bottom of the funnel, but trying to get access to those sort of end of the day conclusions that you guys may not have unless the partner gives to you? Like, hey, we got whatever 20,000 names from you guys, and hey, we sold 500 cars. Great, awesome. Or did they not necessarily tell you that? Or hey, we did some sentiment analysis and did some surveys in the off season, and it's true now. Like, Giants fans tend to have a higher awareness or a better outlook on us as a brand. Like, are those things that you have to sort of ask for? Those things that it's on the property to commission, like MSG? How's it typically come about?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a mixed bag. Sometimes partners are really game to give you the information of what's on the back end, and sometimes they might not be able to give it to you, and also just being careful with whatever their legal teams say. But most of the time, they're game, right? You just have to be good and diligent about asking for that and kind of setting that expectation from the beginning, because ultimately, it's all in the name of wanting to do better for your partner.
Yeah.
So it's really great for all parties involved when you can do that. I think the big thing when it comes to lead generation is it's a natural fit with sports partnerships. I think where teams can go wrong is when they try to do that only via organic social media. They're trying to drive lower funnel tactics with organic social, which is really not made for that. All these social channels are really telling you we want to keep you on platform. Meanwhile, you're trying to drive them off, right? So it's making sure, again, back in that beginning stage of saying, like, hey, if we're going to try to drive people to this website, we need to make sure we're aligning the right tactic, maybe using paid media, maybe using email, SMS, using your app to really drive people that way, to make sure that you're achieving that goal.
No, it's really smart. You're really thinking about the context, the platform, the behavior on the platform, and not trying to square peg round hole it because that's an uphill battle and it's not good for the fans, not good for the partner either, let alone the property. I,
Right, right. And everybody wants the vanity of being on social. But then again, that goes to the importance so much upfront of asking your partners what's their goals, how are we going to be measured, what's your budget, who's your target audience. Like those are four key questions you can ask any partner that should help shape that. Because when they say, oh, but we want to be on organic social, it's like, well, if you want to achieve this, here's why it works. And that kind of goes back to my agency days of like really showing how a strategy builds towards what their goal is. So it helps it sell it in easier.
oh, I love that point. Having a great conversation here with Alex Kopilow, Senior Manager of Business Solutions for MSG Sports. Alex, I feel like we just started. Time is flying. Let's go into about how these activations come together. I think there's the infamous quip is that social media and sponsorship don't get along, or sometimes it's like, hey, this is what you're gonna do, or I wish you would talk to us about these deals. How do deals or how do activations ideas typically come together? Is it good? Is it better to have a menu of this is stuff we know we're going to do. We know we're going to have a starting five. We know we're going to have a final score. We know we're going to have predict the first goal score or whatever it might be. Or do you find that these days it's better to have something custom for the partner? I'm sure it varies across the board, but do you typically see having that menu of assets as a good starting point?
Yeah, menu of assets is incredibly important. It really helps prepare your sales team of what's available, and they can access that as they're talking to prospects, whether it's informally or formally. They have a sense of what even can be offered. At least generally, that might be more turnkey, maybe some more custom ideas, but it really gives them the lay of the land of kind of what's available. But also, I think it kind of pulling back here, the most important thing is speaking directly with your content team and being in lockstep with them. You have to be deeply ingrained within your content team to understand what are their brand standards, what can we offer, how are they feeling about an execution, and what's going on in the market, right? If I'm talking to the content teams and they're saying, hey, Alex, like we're really loaded in the pregame window and we feel like we have a ton of branded content there. Can we kind of try to shift priorities? Like that's something that we need to know. And then I then need to communicate to the sales team because while it might be on a menu, it doesn't mean it's necessarily available. So it's really good to have just a view of what's available, but also it's really important to have the details on that menu. What channels, what's the cadence, what's the brand integration, right? Because the more you leave vague, the more that it's going to be constructed without the content team in mind. And partners might go and be like, oh, can we have this or that and this? And then you end up with something completely different than what you were trying to pitch in the first place. So a menu is definitely important to have, and also important to have from an organizational standpoint to see like where are the opportunities, where do we have too much, where do we have too little, just to understand as you're going throughout the year. But then yes, there's no matter what you do, you can have the best menu out there. There's going to be opportunities where you have to come up with something completely custom, and that's fine. But now that you know you have the majority of stuff pre-built and has some flexibility maybe in name or structure, you can then build out the custom content as well. So there's always going to be instances where you have to come up with something outside of that as well.
And when it comes to thinking about constructing that menu, are is it? I mean, I'm sure a lot of stuff's already in place because you've been in these organizations that are certainly mature when it comes to social media sponsorship by the time that you arrived. But like you sit down and think about, okay, we have what does a game day look like? We have in the morning we might have a morning shoot around, a morning skate, and then might have some pressers with some of the players and coaches. Then we're gonna have their arrivals and their outfits and their cars driving up. And then we're gonna have them, maybe do a warm up on the court or on the ice. Then we're gonna. Are you like literally thinking through all the potential and working with the content team on all these things that are already happening, or is a lot of times it's already in place, so you don't necessarily need to think about opportunities to innovate? Like, how is that? How do those menus come together, and how do you audit those menus? Season to season.
Yeah, it's really important to just kind of go through your natural flow because some of the best branded content, and honestly, most of the best branded content is stuff that teams are already doing. And not because it means that brands don't get much, but again, to the point of you need to match the expectations of your followers and why they follow you in the first place. Like if you know that quote graphics that run roughly twice a month just crush engagement, then that should absolutely be a part of your menu. And that's something you're already doing. But all it takes is pairing it with a Geico who offers quotes for things all the time to make it
Right.
feel a little bit more custom or inherent to their brand, right? All it takes is just kind of even just tweaking the name of something can take it from what people might call a logo slap to something that feels way more custom. So it's sitting down with the teams and understanding what's the flow of a game day and a non-game day. What are we already doing? And are we comfortable putting a partner on it? And if so, how? But then also making sure to stay close with your content teams about how they feel about it. Just because it's on the menu, and this is what I tell my content teams all the time. Just because you've told me we can put it on the menu doesn't mean I'm just going to go and sell it. Like at any time during the season, if it's going to go in a pitch, I'm going to check with them and be like, are we still good? And are we still good as constructed? Because things such as like, we had found at a point this year where paid partnership tool is hurting performance, or at least we kind of saw that, and we wanted to start testing tagging and copy instead. And if that happens, we change that right up and we can be flexible with that. So it's important to know that the content team, by someone in this kind of position, has an advocate for them and someone who can help speak that language and then in turn help empower the sales team to go and sell and make sure that performance is top of mind for our partners and for our content teams.
And I want to dive in there too on the power of the pun. And you brought up a cool example there with like a Geico quote. You talked earlier about like the pregame brief, and like it's an easy way to instantly know like what this service or product does. And like how is that not the pinnacle, but is that a great outcome when you have a perfectly placed pun that helps cross and is clever? Is it resonate with fans better? And but also like, is there a next level where you also extend to the individual partner's messaging as well? So it's not just a pregame or a post-game quote, and it's like, oh yeah, a quote, just like insurance companies quote you. But even beyond, maybe it's like, it brings them 15% or less. So hey, we're gonna have a giveaway when we hold a team to under 15% shooting in a quarter or something like that. It'd be a hell of a quarter. But like, is there a next level beyond the pun where you're also working in like the individual partners messaging, or is that a little bit tougher to come by?
It doesn't always work for everybody, but it's definitely doable. I mean, the Warriors, for example, with Verizon, they do reliable moments because they have reliable coverage. That's part of their messaging, right? So they tag Verizon in that. There's a hashtag reliable moments, and then they get inclusion within those videos and they post that on game day. So you can definitely take messaging and integrate that in. And it's something that I'm looking for when I'm building out partnerships. So not only am I going to their website and seeing how do they talk about themselves, but also I'm going to the Facebook ads library, which is free and anybody can go and look at, and seeing how are they talking about themselves in ads that they're running on paid social, and can I find a clever way to integrate that in? As taglines can certainly work. I've done it on multiple occasions. Did it with the White Sox. We had Rush Medical Hospital. They had an out of home campaign where they used the word rush in bigger words and then would bold the word rush to make that part stand out. And we saw that and they just so happen also to sponsor home runs in the ballpark. We came up with a concept that was called Crushed. And in the creative, the rush was bolded, and it was all about serving the fan in terms of showing the analytics behind big, long distance home runs. So the distance, the launch angle, the exit velocity, I think that really sang to really hit home on what ties into the ballpark, what ties into the way they're marketing themselves, but most importantly, you know, what works for the fan and does it make sense for the fan and building that out.
Oh, I love that example. Oh man, Alex, there's so many things that keep popping in my head here. And you opened up another opportunity there with that great example, and that opens up this idea of all this new data flowing in that we now have stuff like exit velocity and we might have like speed of a shot in hockey or whatever. We might have like miles run by an NBA player during a game or during a soccer game. In this with this influx of new data, what does that do for your team working with the content team saying, hey, we now have all these stats that are at our disposal now that we could align with a partner for the right message or for the right partner, and let alone the more tech partners that are actually fueling that data like AWS or IBM, whatever. So like, how do you look at that influx of all these new analytics as as opportunities for teams to tell richer stories, but also activate more partners?
Yeah, I think it's a really great opportunity. And what I would tell anyone is it's honestly going to the content team and seeing how accessible is that data in real time in whatever it is that you're building out. I mean, if you're building out a platform that is more evergreen or can run on off days, then great, that's awesome. But it's all about setting the content team up for success. So with the example of Crushed for the White Sox, we knew that all those stats literally were on the broadcast. You could find them on ESPN right away. And the first year that we did it, which was last season, we'd have to look for that via the broadcast and on ESPN and really kind of put those in. And now they've kind of taken it to the next level and have used Slate templates and using that vendor to help making the inputs of that data even faster and templatized it and make it look really, really clean. So it's really working with them on that. But I mean, I've always had a goal of doing something like Kirk Goldsberry's content and just creating very visual like shot charts and things like that. I mean, he's kind of the gold standard of visualizing data and making it really cool for fans. If you could replicate that, I think you'd have really something strong on your hands. And there's plenty of partners out there that are focused on stats and data.
Hell yeah. Let's a few minutes left here with Alex Kopilow, Team Manager of Business Solutions for MSG Sports. Alex, I'm going to keep you as long as I can because this is so much good stuff we can talk about. I want to talk briefly about the sort of auditing, whether it's the menu of assets or just different things that happen here. I mean, I think about my own experience, and we were doing first goal predictions 10 years ago. We're still doing first goal predictions now in hockey, and it's not a bad thing. It's something that fans enjoy. It's good for partners. But is there a point where you don't want to get stale, or is that okay? Like if things just keep working, like why, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Like how do you balance the desire to not be stale and to drive more new things and innovation versus just not upsetting something that works well that fans enjoy?
I think it's all about the data. We do a good job of looking at what does the data say? Does it say that there's a drop off? Are people not paying as much attention? Are they not going through the user journey that you want in like selecting the first goal, right? The Devils do that with Jackpocket. They're driving people to a website to enter to get some free lottery tickets and also win bigger prizes. If they saw that traffic was really poor, it started to drop off because it's running every single game. I am never shy to adjust based on results and data. I think let that tell the story. And so if it's saying really great in the beginning of the year, bad in the back end of the year, maybe it means reducing cadence. Sometimes it might mean leading a partner to say, hey, we are not seeing success with this. Here is why. It will show them the stats. But then I think the biggest part in making a change is just being proactive with a solution. Okay, we're changing this, but here's another option that really helps you achieve this goal. And here's how it's going to shift. Keep it fresh. We think it'll do better. And as long as you come with that data-backed rationale and the fact of how it aligns with their goals and their standards, I think anyone's always willing to shift. Like I think partners are super amenable to that. Like if you're just upfront with them of the why and the rationale, like why wouldn't they want to perform better? I think everybody wants the top performance. So I think if you're doing a good job of that storytelling and presenting that data, then you're really going to succeed.
And how do new things come about too? Like, is there? I'm sure every team, an organization might have their own process, but is there a sense of whether it's working with a content team or just shooting the shit maybe after work sometime at a bar or over coffee, where you're like, hey, like let's like, do you almost seed the opportunities for future sponsor content or future branded assets where it's like, hey, let's try seeing if fans want to whatever predict who's going to have score the game winning goal or who's going to lead the team in 3-point shooting for the first half, and then if that accrues enough quality data, then you can take it to a party. Like, how do those things germinate? I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, definitely always sharing new ideas. I think I personally do it to an annoying extent. It's something that I love to do. So I'm not shy about that. But our team, you're using Slack, when you're meeting in person, like when you see something, say something, right? Like if you see something out in the market that you really liked or something that you can be inspired by, share that with your team because you can take that inspiration and move it forward and kind of building out something bigger. I mean, something that I've seen in the market that I'm really impressed by is the Warriors Dub the Vote campaign for their All-Star voting campaign with Google Cloud, right? They've found this massive platform that they can align with a stats-based partner and kind of align their all-star content to get people to vote. So it helps the organization to get people into the all-star game. They activate it not just digitally, but also in the arena and find all these different extensions of it. And it's really those 360 campaigns that we talked about. So if I see that and I really like it, I'm sharing that with the team. I'm reaching out to the Warriors to learn more about that. And then also other people on the team are just bringing up what they love. And that's the best thing, right? Because when you see someone from your creative team, your content team, your PR team, they're really excited about something, like that'll probably do really well because they're motivated to do it. So I think it's always great to lean into what people are excited about and sharing it and kind of creating the environment where can just share ideas and no shame if people are like, that's not the best idea. Like, I think it's more about just getting in the environment of sharing and understanding that any idea can spark an idea and it might be something completely different.
And let's dive deeper into sort of that test and learn phase too, especially as new platforms come about, new features come about. Like TikTok, of course, is the big elephant out there, and then you have like YouTube Shorts come about, or Instagram Reels becomes more of a thing. Like, I'm sure some organizations are like, oh crap, we got to monetize. Like, let's go. We got some more revenue sitting on the table for us. Or others might be more of a wait and see, or like, let's see what other teams do before or let's grow our audience first and get to know this platform better. Like, what's that process like for you, for your colleagues, when it's okay, we got a new platform, we're gonna be on it, we know we're gonna have a presence on it. Now, like, do we wait to monetize? Do we try to get sponsors in right away? Do we go to our sponsors or our prospects that are a little more, not savvy is the wrong term, but a little more experimentational? What's that process like for you guys to evaluate and then ultimately activate?
Yeah, I think for a new venture, it's kind of, I have mixed opinions on it. I mean, part of me is like, hey, if you're going to venture into something new, like an Instagram broadcast channel, right? Like people are really starting to jump into those now. Part of me is saying, let's see what it is first and then go from there. Like let's figure that out and see, is our audience into it? What can we do about it? Because that tends to be the right approach, because selling something you don't know how it's going to do is really difficult. It's really difficult to get a partner on board, especially if you can't say, here's the expected performance and things of
Right.
that nature. But also for our brand and our content teams, it's, how is it going to do? Is it worth our time? Are we stretching ourselves too thin? Like those are important questions to answer. So I think that's really something important to keep in mind. On the flip side, our team over here launched a podcast with Henrik Lundqvist called Club 30. And, we worked on that and, got Verizon to buy onto that, starting from zero. And it's had tremendous success in building up new social channels for that podcast and seeing a lot of impressions and engagement come through there. We've seen listenership be pretty strong. I think we were #1 on the charts in the sports category, which doesn't mean you're the most listened to caveat that, but it does mean that there is interest there. So we've seen some early success, and I'm really, even like that example, I'm intrigued by the podcast model and starting handles specific for that, because you can, with platforms like Instagram Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, you can pump out a ton of content and just see what sticks. And some things are going to pop off and some things might not do so great. So when exploring new platforms, I think the most important thing is like understanding why you're doing it in the first place and be like, what is it that we're trying to achieve? And in most situations, you probably wait to monetize it, but there's certainly exceptions to the rule.
Is there something to the depth? Because I think the podcast world, and you sort of stimulated this thought in me, the depth of engagement or the value of engagement. Like I always like to say, like I don't think that all likes are created equally or all comments are created equally. I know oftentimes we simplify or oversimplify that stuff when it comes to reports. Like this is how many likes we got over the course of the season or how many comments we got over the course of the season. But if there is a piece of branded content that has some really powerful messaging and it's a really in-depth feature that speaks to a partner's like activation in the community along with the team, or in the podcast space where you might have an advertiser that might not be reaching the same amount that a TikTok post does, but when you're listening to Henrik Lundqvist talk and have that parasocial relationship, like those reads mean that much more, even though it's a smaller audience. Like, are we maturing in that space where we appreciate that? Well, this might not be as viral a post, but it's more powerful content. So therefore, the engagement means more, or it's also like a more targeted audience, and an engagement with an 18-year-old means more than engagement with a 50-year-old. Like, how mature are we when it comes to that stuff, or do partners mostly not care that much yet because they ultimately just want to report good results?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's on the teams and the way they communicate that, right? I think it's really important when you report on the back end to frame up the results in the way that's going to be impactful. So what I mean by that specifically is instead of reporting on just total impressions or just total engagements, it's an impressions per post and how does that compare to your channel average or the way it went last year, engagements per post, engagement rates, like what are the benchmarks you can compare that to? And then there's some in-depth metrics that you can use. If you're talking about a little bit more long form video content, what is the average percentage viewed and how long are people listening? So if you're doing a good job of that, it's like, hey, maybe we didn't have as many views, but if we have over a 50% average percentage viewed on something that's 5+ minutes long, like that's pretty incredible to say that you've held attention that long, especially if the branding was on screen the whole time with a watermark or something like that. I mean, you can really help tell that story. And then if you've done a good job of in the outset of the partnership aligning the content with the right channel based on audience, again, to asking that what's your target audience? If we're talking Gen Z, you might want to target an Instagram or a TikTok or a YouTube. Then you're reaching the right audience as well. So I think you can definitely use the data points these platforms give you to do that. And then also it's important to benchmark to give context around the results.
Love that. It's a thoughtful answer. Last thing for you, as a shareable stat, I promise we'll get there. I've kept you too long already, but it's something that I like to talk about a lot. As we have all these emerging platforms come out, we have Web3, we have Metaverse, we have generative AI now, and the next thing that will come out. Who's really like how do not responsible for it, but how does the sort of evaluation of that stuff come together in an organization, whether it's in your experience or what you've learned or at MSG or elsewhere, of okay, like who's responsible for learning about this stuff, and then how do we evaluate whether it's right for us, and then how do we evaluate how to monetize it, and also we think about like the idea of partners helping you do things that you wouldn't be able to do without a partner, right? We wouldn't have a Roblox land for the Knicks, but because a partner wants to do it and is willing to pay for it, now we can, even if it's not like going to go viral for our fans. Like, what's the process like of having those new platforms come about, and how you guys go about learning about them and figuring out if they're worth the time and figuring out how or if to monetize?
Yeah, I mean, with new platforms, I think it's a team effort of, who's involved in the content or marketing teams and what comes about. And again, getting to that environment of just sharing new things that come and, what the plan of attack would be. But I think with any new channel, in the way I'd recommend going about it is like, does it make sense for your team and why, and really be thoughtful in that process? Like, do you have the staff to extend yourself to a Discord and manage a community, right?
Mhm.
Being on there just to be on there is not going to help you if you can't manage it and you can't do that. I think there's a lot of great teams out there that build secondary accounts that are outside their team channels, whether it's community focused or alumni focused
Yeah.
or historical highlight focused.
Cool. Did a good
Or
job.
I think the best example is the Warriors, doing their business focused TikTok life at GSW. Like, that's great. I would love to do that, but also like, is the staff there? Does it make sense for you at that time? So it's really should be team to team and making sure that whatever you choose to extend yourself, that you can actually go and do it well, because there's plenty of opportunities, even with it's hard to say just Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, but there's plenty. There's plenty to do, and just things that are run of the mill. So I think it's always important to understand like what kind of budgets and bandwidth you actually have and do the things you do really well. And then when it comes to partner opportunities, is what I like to tell, our teams is partnerships can bring in those dollars. So what couldn't you do that was restricted because of budget? How can we help you get there? So that really can help extend things too and bring you new opportunities. So partnerships is a really great way to help get the budgets necessary to try new and big things.
That's the inspirational pitch I'll have us leave on. But we're having some more fun with you coming up in our briefs segment. The first episode of Shareable Stat coming up right now. I could seriously talk with Alex all day, every day, run through examples, ideas, insights, and just trade barbs back and forth. Just stick around with him because we're going to have some more fun with him and learn more in our briefs segment. Some really good insights coming there too, so make sure to listen to that. But first episode's Shareable Stat. This episode's Shareable Stat is a little bit different. It's not an exact stat, but because it got some good conversation when I posted it on Twitter with a few folks in the sports space, it came from a recent report by Sponsor United. You look them up. They have a pretty good platform covering all things sponsorship in sports. And they found that less than half of pro sports teams have a YouTube presence, have an official YouTube channel. I'm not exactly sure what the criteria is to define a pro sports team. Of course, it means they have professional athletes, but whether it's just every big and major pro sports, if it's North America, if it's global, that I'm not sure about that. But still, that is a pretty maybe a surprising stat, maybe not a surprising stat that half of pro sports teams have a YouTube presence. And of course, a lot of it does come down to early on, or even nowadays still, with content restrictions, leagues oftentimes overseeing all use of content. But still, at the end of the day, we see so many different ways to succeed on a platform like YouTube. But it comes down to resources, it comes down to goals, it comes down to outcomes you can drive as well. So, of course, teams have to step back and figure out, is the platform we should be on? Is it a platform that they have potential fans on? Can it lead to revenue? How much revenue? How much would you have to put in resource-wise and budget-wise in order to get to a viable revenue stream and a recurring or consistent revenue stream? Is there interest from partners to be on there? Can your sponsored content work on there? And of course, if you decide you should be on that platform, then it's, do you have content already in place that can fit well on that platform? Do you need to come up with a strategy to win on that platform? Do you have to invest in creating really good thumbnails? We all know the importance of a thumbnail. What metrics are important? Is it views, subscribers? Is it completion rate? Should you be creating playlists? There's so many different variables. And as a platform, we do see a lot of teams and leagues and athletes thrive on that platform, and it could be an area to experiment with new ideas. Maybe you start with lower effort, low hanging fruit. If you have a podcast, you put YouTube is obviously targeting podcasts right now. So if your team has a podcast, maybe you start there. Maybe you start with just putting interviews up. Are you looking for timely content? Do you want to train fans to go there and look up for time sensitive content like the interviews after a game, or do you want to try to create more evergreen content that can still be driving significant views 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the line? Can it be a place where you can monetize your archive if you have the ability to do so? We saw a little bit of that happen during the pandemic when there was no other content to post. So a lot here to consider. I've already been rambling on about it too much, but super interesting topic to talk about, to think about, hopefully discuss with your team, your colleagues, or people you like geeking out with in the space. But more importantly, so again, that's that. Half of pro sports teams, less than half, according to Sponsor United, have a YouTube presence. Really interesting, but more important, more interesting is we have our brief segment coming up right now with Alex Kopilow of MSG Sports. Right back from this episode's Shareable Stat, and I'm joined once again by Alex Kopilow. He is Senior Manager of Business Solutions for MSG Sports. Alex, you gave us a masterclass in all things digital, social, partnerships. Are you now ready to respond to some briefs?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, we got you. Number one, tell me your favorite campaign you got to work on from your time in the agency world. You worked on some cool clients, cool campaigns. Which one is the one that sticks out in your mind?
Yeah, it was definitely the anniversary of the Happy Meal. I mean, we got to do the 50th anniversary of the Happy Meal. It was incredible. We brought back iconic toys from the past and we were able to put them in Happy Meals, and it was a nationwide campaign. So a ton of time and a ton of planning went into that. The better part of a year was spent planning that, from creative to strategy to execution. And I'll never forget. On Halloween night, I was out to dinner with some friends. And before we even got there, I was late to that dinner because there was a leak of the campaign and what toys
Oh,
were
wow.
going to be released. And so we had to adjust. We had to adjust our strategy and how we were going to communicate everything, and what the news was going to be. But so much run from digital execution of what our organic strategy was. We had paid in there, paid influencers, earned influencers. It really was just like everything you could imagine in terms of building out a digital strategy, but then the opportunity to work across departments in such a huge national campaign was a ton of work, but was so proud to see it come together. And everybody I worked with on that campaign, like we really were all dug in on it, and it's just something I'll always remember.
Man, that's so cool. It sounds like so much fun too, even with the stress of a leak there toward the end. But that's awesome stuff, man. Number two, going back to your time doing on-air work. I'm picturing you calling games and throwing out great taglines or great one-liners. But tell me the most memorable day for whatever reason from your time doing on-air work in sports.
Yeah, there are a few. I mean, honorable mention to watching the South Dakota State Jackrabbits make their first NCAA tournament when I was out in Sioux Falls.
Oh yeah.
Just an intern there at the ABC station, KSFY. But I think my favorite moment with sports in my on-air career was getting to cover the Army Navy game when I was out at what's now Spectrum News in the Hudson Valley. West Point is right there, and getting to cover Army Navy was a whole different experience. I'm an Ohio State grad, so I've seen Ohio State, Michigan, and what that rivalry is like. This is completely different between the pageantry and just kind of it's their last time on the football field before they have to go, serve their country, and all the emotion that goes into that, and watching these two teams battle it out, the fans there, and just the whole day leading up from pregame to after they're singing their alma maters after the game is just it's something I would recommend to any sports fan to go and experience themselves.
That's so cool. You hear everyone say that like you have to experience it. It's a bucket list item, and everyone that you hear talk about going says that like it doesn't just meet, it surpasses your expectations. It's even more magical than you could have imagined, and it's just so cool you got to experience that. And I gotta get out there someday as well to West Point. Number three, tell me you've cited some great examples already, but tell me just whether it's recent or not, a sports partnership activation that you like to cite as a best practice or something that's was super cool to see.
Yeah, I've mentioned a lot, so I definitely want to give some love to one that I worked on back in my time in Chicago. We launched a documentary on YouTube celebrating, Tim Anderson's time with the White Sox. It was TA7, the story of Tim Anderson. We did that in partnership with Nike. I mean, getting to work with Nike on a partnership campaign is outstanding, right? Like that's
Oh
something
yeah.
that anyone would strive to want to do. But I think what was so much fun about it, other than the fact that it was, incredible work, was getting to work with so many different people within the organization, from PR to marketing, to the social team, to the video team, design, and really being so thoughtful about how everything would be communicated, key messaging around exclusively being available on YouTube, and trying to drive people there and drive subscriptions and drive viewership. The fact that it was shown on MLB Network, the MLB wanted to pick it up, so that was really cool. Got some earned media around that. I mean, and I think most importantly, just like seeing the incredible work that the social and video teams did around that. I mean, I worked with some really talented people there, and the fact that like they got to shine in everything that they put together, it was just such a pleasure to see that come to life, especially when there was a lockout. Um, it was on hold, so we had to wait for the lockout to end and then
Wow.
roll that out. So it definitely made things tougher, but incredibly proud of that work and to see it go across so many different channels and really have organizational buy-in and the access and see it come to life is just something that I really, really loved.
That sounds like a lot of fun and super cool. I'll just check that out on YouTube for sure after this. That's awesome. Number four, going back to time at Ohio State. Jealous you got to go to an exciting school for sports. I did not do that quite as much myself. But tell me the most memorable game from your time there as a student.
Yeah, my favorite game actually, loved the shoe. Got to go all the time, and I'll never forget it. But actually, it was a game at Kinnick Stadium in Iowa. Ohio State was playing against the Hawkeyes. Came down to the wire. Huge catch in the fourth quarter, I think, by Dane Sounsenbacher.
Mhm.
And then kind of drove a touchdown in late, and I was in that end zone. I had been doing the halftime and post game shows, for student sports radio for Ohio State, so I was in attendance. I was in right behind the end zone for the winning touchdown scored on that end zone. So will always stand out to have been there. And honestly, Kinnick Stadium underrated, and that was before the whole Children's Hospital tradition that was there. But that stadium, that is a great environment for college football.
That's super cool. I can remember being on the field for exciting moments in my own college experience for football, but I was always, when everyone else was, cheering or rushing the field, I was running around with my camera like an idiot. Were you able to enjoy and like jump around and cheer? Where you're like, oh shit, I gotta figure out how to get the best shot now.
Had to stay objective. Was very happy and made sure to contain my excitement, but just an amazing game that came down to the wire, and to be that close for that moment was really something special.
That's so awesome. Number five. This is gonna be a fun one, or maybe a really hard one. We'll see. What would White Sox brass want fans to say about why Chicago and cheer for the White Sox instead of the other team in Chicago, the Cubbies? What would
You know,
the top line be?
I think the important thing is that it's not just North Side, South Side. Everybody thinks, oh, North Side Cubs, South Side White Sox, and there's a ton of White Sox fans that are on the North Side. Of course, the South Side as well, but I
Mhm.
think they do a really great job of representing, the market and really celebrating the fact that they are part of Chicago. They are part of the South Side, so they do a great job of celebrating their community, and bringing representation from that community into to what they do. So it is quintessential Chicago, and they would love to have fans come out, but I think there's certainly a great kind of time for fans to go there, and a great experience that is something that people should go to.
So ultimately, it's the White Sox embody Chicago better than the Cubs, or what are we getting at here?
I would not. I mean, look, you got two great products in Chicago. I mean, ultimately, you've got two great options there. The same way right now in New York, you got the Mets and the Yankees,
True.
right? Can't go wrong. I mean, I'm a Mets fan, so maybe you can go wrong. It hasn't been a lot of winning, but ultimately, it's just a lot of great baseball happening in Chicago, and just because you're on one side doesn't mean that you're experiencing worse baseball. I think they both had their successes and struggles, but the White Sox certainly have a lot to offer, and more than just for people on the South Side.
We'll take that. We'll take that. No animosity from you. We're like you keep your friends in Chicago on all sides. Number six. This is an interesting one for you. Tell me the most important point or metrics or things that prospects partners want to know about a team's social media when they're deciding whether or not to work with them. Like what are the questions that typically come up, or metrics they want to hear, or demographics they want to know about? Like what are some of the mainline questions that partners will ask?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all about stemming to what it is that they want to achieve. But I think average performance, right, or expected performance, obviously impressions is something that people are always going to ask about, whether it's expected impressions or or estimations on that front. Engagements is really always good to share as well. Again, that goes back to the value prop of digital. And then just like any more insight you can give into an execution, right? If you are running a sweepstakes and you average 10,000 entries, and the opt-in rate for partners is 70%, that's incredible,
Yeah.
right? Like that would really help sell something home. So I think it's just being good about putting data forward, contextualizing it with benchmarks, and making sure it really fits the goals and their target audience, right? So like it's basically showing that you listen to the partner when they said, here's what we want, or here's what we want to achieve, right? If you want to hit, men aged 25 to 34, and you're recommending Instagram where maybe there's a low percentage of that, it's like you haven't listened, and you need to show that the data represents that you've listened to the partner and the why you're recommending something.
Are you finding some of those more vanity metrics? So like, especially now with TikTok, does follower count matter? Does it, and also like, does engagement rate matter if as long as the engagements per post or impressions per post are still good? Like, are there things that we focus on more on I guess the social media side of the space that partners don't care about quite as much as we do internally?
Yeah, I think it's really that's a really good point on follower counts. I think people still really want to know like how many followers you have, but it's all about, that's why a role like this is so important, to be able to kind of speak this language, because your TikToks, your IG Reels, your YouTube Shorts, follower count doesn't matter. And they have said that, specifically with TikTok, they have said your follower count does not matter in terms of success. And that's great to have. But if you can tell that story and saying, on average, this is how many views we're getting, this is how many engagements, regardless of followers, I think that's really important. And then again, a good way to contextualize results is, where do you stand in the league? Where do you rank in these metrics within the league? And how can you say this is how we set ourselves apart? I think that's also really good in supporting that, even if they're asking for your follower count. Like, be transparent. I mean, it's public information. They can go find how many followers you have, but you can definitely share information on why you don't need to focus on that as much, especially because ultimately, like, I think people need to understand that you don't reach every single follower you have. In fact, it's a very small percentage of the followers you actually have, and you have a better chance of reaching a larger chunk of that audience the more engaged your audience is.
Oh, I have like 8 follow-up questions, but we'll skip it for now. There's so many things that always get the wheels turning there. All right, number 7. Tell me, so far in your time at MSG, what's been your favorite campaign you've gotten to work on or collaborate on?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really good time here, just the size and scale of getting to work at MSG. I think some of the best work we did this year was working in collaboration with Delta, some of the custom content that we did with them. On the Knicks side, we did a really fun version of the Newlywed Game and called it Wingmen. Great tie-in to the brand there, but also something that I really loved that it did is it uncovered moments of the camaraderie between the team, and really just showcase player personality, right? Like, the first episode of that series was Jalen Brunson and Ryan Arcidiacono and their time at Villanova and how well they knew each other. Like, those are some great moments that you can only get from that kind of access, and being able to make such a strong tie to Delta, not only just with the name, but the graphics package that we used and the way we integrated into that content series, I think was very, very strong. And then on the Ranger side, a truly unique offering that we had Delta work with us on was Dad's Trip. There's a weekend every year for the Rangers where all the dads come out and are with the team, and get to see, their kids go out and play at the professional level. So the kind of the all access feel of that, a natural integration because it's on the road, flying in a Delta plane, and for them, the importance of making connections. Connections really important to them. Being able to showcase that, it really delivered, and our content team did an outstanding job of bringing that to the forefront and pitching that to the partner and saying, like, these are your goals and this perfectly aligns with it, but also this is something our fans love, and having those synergies was incredibly important. So the custom content we did for Delta this year, I think really, really hit home.
That's fantastic to hear. Oh, I love both those examples. Those are awesome. All right, time for our food question, Alex. I'm gonna make this a two-parter, I guess, because I now you're Northeast based. So tell me the best meal to get in Chicago and where you got it, and also the best meal to get in New York and where to get it. Where are we going?
Yeah, I'll start in New York, and while I grew up here, I have less experience as an adult. But Xi'an Famous Foods,
Okay.
outstanding. Their spicy cumin lamb noodles, I mean, to die for. And Scar's Pizza is currently my favorite slice of pizza in New York. So definitely two spots to check out. Chicago, I'm much more up to date on. I used to have a running list of rankings of Chicago. Favorite spots, Bavette's if you want a good steak. If you want great cocktails and a great meal, Abba and the West Loop, outstanding. Um, and if you want the best burger, the Loyalist in Chicago is where you got to go. But if you need any recommendations, I've got plenty.
We are set. All right. Well, I'll have to visit Chicago and then also visit you in New York, and we'll go get some food there as well. Oh, that sounds good. Number nine. This is a great one. We talked about a little bit offline because you do such a good job of keeping up with everything. And it's impossible. It's an impossible task to keep up with everything that's happening out there in the greater sports space in the world. So just tell us in brief, like, how do you keep up with the industry, with what teams and leagues and are doing, how partners are activating? What are some of your tips?
Yeah, what I'd recommend is making secondary accounts on social media for yourself. So I have second Instagram account, Twitter account, Facebook account, and what I've done is I've followed every major sports team via that account. So a little bit tedious to do all the follows, and of course, on something like Instagram, they will flag you as a bot if you're following too many people at once. So got to be really careful and patient with that. But I follow every single person there. And then every weekday, I give myself the weekends off, but I dedicate time each day to scroll the feeds. Literally, I prioritize Instagram. I find that the most interesting ideas come from that platform, or at least I tend to be most inspired there. But I go through IG stories, every single one that's active that day. I'll scroll the feed for 5 minutes and then hit save on any of that, screenshot any IG stories. And then at the end of the week, I'm going through my archives and putting them down on a list that I have that I can kind of pull to the forefront and make sure, if I'm inspired by something, a name, an integration, a cool content series, like not only am I sharing that, but keeping it in my back pocket for later. And
Yeah.
then I found Twitter is super effective for this because their advanced search, you can search for a brand or a keyword and see what everybody else is doing because you can filter by people you follow. So now you can see everybody in sports and what they're doing with a certain partner as long as it's mentioned in the copy. There's other vendors that can help you do that, someone like a Sponsor United, but I've really found while it's a manual process, while it's a little tedious, it's always really good to stay up to date that way. And then of course, following people like you, following people like Jess Smith, Amy Keene, like people who are sharing things with the community, is always a good way to stay up on the latest and greatest and just being curious when something stands out to you.
Yeah, so much good stuff there. It's so much work you put into it that it pays off though, and it's not easy. Like this is tough work to keep up with everything. It's a hard thing to do. We're gonna end with a fun one here as well. Tell me, from your lifetime, it's not gonna make you think about the old days. From your lifetime, the Mount Rushmore of Ohio State football.
Yeah, it's a tough one. A lot of talent. Go Bucks. But my Mount Rushmore, I would go with Ezekiel Elliott, part of the
Okay.
national title team. He was just iconic in that run. Have to go with him. Joey Bosa,
Yep.
got to be there. Ton of great guys on the D line that I could have chosen there, but Joey Bosa just was a force to be reckoned with, and loved watching him play. Going back to my time actually in college, Beanie Wells, also at the running back position. I
Oh,
mean, that guy really just made the offense go, especially when we were back in the old Big Ten days where not a lot of speed and really running the ball a lot. And then I really liked Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm Jenkins, a personal favorite of mine, a cornerback, and then loved watching him with the Saints and all those great defenses, and then of course with the Eagles. So that would be my four. I think if I had to add a fifth, it'd be James Laurinaitis. I still have his jersey, but that's my Mount Rushmore of Ohio State football guys.
it's a tough task. I'll tell you that. There's so many players that you could put on there. I mean, in every position, it's tough. That's a good one. I'll take that team against anybody. All right, Alex, kicked ass in your briefs. Now your chance to take over and tell us your social media all-star followers. Tell us who they are, what platform they're on, and why they're worth following.
Yeah, I'd recommend following Emma Kramer on Twitter. Emma C. Kramer. She's the senior digital director over at Real Salt Lake, and now the Utah Royals as they get an NWSL team. But I think she does an incredible job of highlighting the efforts of her team, all the creative things that they're doing, giving credit to all the hard work that they're putting into what they're producing from a digital perspective. But in terms of a leader, and who you'd want as a manager and leading a team, she does an incredible job of just giving credit to people, shining that spotlight, and showing you how things are made, right? Taking you along for the journey and kind of showing how something is being built. So I think she does an incredible job and would definitely recommend giving her a follow on Twitter.
That's a great call out. And to anyone that's running a digital social team out there, please share more often. Share what your team is doing. Share your successes. Share everything. And Emma's a great one doing that. How about you, Alex? Where can we find you, as well as all things MSG? And there's a lot of MSG properties I know, but let's start with you.
Yeah, just me. At Alex Kopilow across platforms. Right now, I'm the most active on LinkedIn. It's just for fun. When I see some great branded content, great tips and tricks that I see. I mean, I saw Red Bull Racing recently using the renamed audio to push calls to action. Anything I find, I'm posting on there. And it's for fun for me, but also maybe I find out who else is working only in digital partnerships, a position that was kind of like a role and responsibility for social media directors that was just kind of thrown in. If you work in this space, I would love to hear from you. So that's where I'm the most active, and Twitter as well.
And then I guess list off all the MSG properties and people can go follow them if they'd like.
Let's see. Knicks, at MI Knicks, at MI Rangers. We've got Westchester Knicks, Junior Knicks and Rangers, Knicks Gaming, the Rockettes, the Garden, the Sphere. I mean, goes on and on. It's a huge set of properties, but it's definitely one that I've been really excited to be a part of. And was definitely one of the reasons that brought me here for sure.
And they are lucky to have someone like you, especially you yourself, being so on top of the stuff and really just intellectually curious, and just so good to pick your brain today, learn from you, hear some examples, hear your insights. You are helping to lead this industry forward, and we're lucky to have you on today.
I appreciate the time, Neil. It was a great time, great conversation. Can't wait to do it more.
Hell yeah. So much again to Alex Kopilow. It's been a long time coming. Again, he's someone that just does such a good job in the space, working in it, helping to divulge insights about it, and helping the community learn more every day, and finding cool examples, cool ideas, new things to think about. I just cannot thank Alex enough for coming on the podcast today, for his time, his knowledge, insight, and his wisdom, and look forward to more great chats, continuing to learn from him on all platforms. But that'll do it for this episode of the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast. Thanks again for listening. As always, I'm your host, Neil Horowitz. You can find me on Twitter at NJH287. Also, hit me up on LinkedIn, where I post more content. The website where you can find the podcast and other blog posts is dsmsports.net. And go and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode on your preferred podcast platform. Until next time, this is Neil Horowitz signing off for the Digital and Social Media Sports Podcast.